Howdy everybody, it's Maya Andreasen, and today we're going to go through kind of step by step how to take the information of the 3D model that you've generated from Sampler or reality capture or reality scan or whatever software application that you used to 3D scan your object and make a digital double. We are going to take that into Maya. We're going to retop it. We'll talk a little bit about retopology tools. There is an auto retopping, which is great. And then how to get those that model and everything into Substance Painter if you want to modify it further. All right, let's get started. So the first thing we are going to do is we're going to go File. I'm going to set my project. So I am setting it to this little wooden dog and set. Now I do want to preface by saying that the 3D scan of this is not perfect. It was really hard to get the front of the dog's muzzle because it's pointing towards the ground, so that was actually really hard to capture. And though pictures were taken, they were not read as viable information in at least in Sampler, because that's what I used to take the photographic information and generate it into a digital double. So we're going to import our FBX of our model, and here it is, wooden test dog, and we're going to import it. And initially it's very large, right? So we're trying to get the scale. And here it is. So the first thing I'm going to do actually is I'm going to go into faces mode, and I'm going to delete those extra faces that I don't need, which is fairly easy to do. There's a couple of them here that I could probably get rid of. Let's see. You know, I don't really need, I don't want to go too crazy, right? Just want to get rid of some of them. Let's zoom in a bit. Alright. Might want to keep those. Alright. Let's see. Oh, you know what? I'm going to keep those. We're just going to keep it as is, and we are going to use the retopping tool. So I've selected it. We can see how many tries and faces are on that model because we have poly count up. If you want to find poly count, you go to display, heads up display, and you just make sure poly count is checked on. It is in alphabetical order, so you can find it that way. If you want to keep this menu open, you just click the little dotted line up here at the top of the menu, and that will open the menu so you can peruse it at your leisure. And that's a little easier when it comes to selecting items in any menu. So that trick works for any menu. All right, so we have selected our model. I am going to do a couple things. First, I'm going to freeze transformations, delete history. I'm also going to do the same thing for the group. So you can see in the group the scale is 100 by 100 by 100. I want to freeze transformations, bring our scale down 1 to 1 to 1, so that when we create our duplicate, it doesn't move or shift. The duplicate needs to be properly right on top of the original model. Otherwise, when we try to transfer that high poly information to the low poly, it will not work. All right, so we have our wonderful high poly doggy, and we are going to go to Mesh Retopologize Options box. I'm going to reset settings so we can see everything. So the first thing I want to do is I want to keep my original model, so I'm going to check that on. I am going to make my target count, so there's about 10,000 faces. I actually did this previously. I did it at 1,000 faces. That was not enough faces. it just was too little information. So we're going to do this at 5,000 faces, and we are going to retopologize. We're going to ignore and continue. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, if the model is a little too funky. And as you can see here, we have a very nice model. I'm just going to hit H so that we can see this new model. So this is our low poly model. So I'm going to call this Doggy Low. Okay, and then this one is going to be Doggy High, because that's our high poly model and this is our low poly model. Now if I make Doggy High visible and Doggy Low invisible, by the way I pressed H as in Henry to make things visible and invisible. And if you hit H, you can see that we have very lovely texture here. Let me make the grid disappear. But you can see there is some texture information that did not transfer, and that is what I was talking about when I was talking about the pictures. We tried to get pictures of the bottom of the doggy and the muzzle, and that information couldn't be read very easily. I think if I were to make another scan of this model, I would have it higher up so that I could hopefully, kind of raised up so that I could see this little doggy's little muzzle a little bit more easily. All right, so he transferred very well, but what we need to do is transfer the textures. So if we go over to Workspace UV Editing, we're going to see that we do have UVs for our original doggy, our high poly, but our low poly doesn't have any information, so we actually have to bake that shader down to the low poly. So the first thing we need to do is lay out the UVs. For this particular tutorial, I am just going to do auto UVs, which is not the best, but it does work. As you can see, it does kind of make a bit of a mess of my UVs, but it has laid out the UVs, and I needed this to get done pretty speedily just for the sake of our tutorial. And I have taken this into Substance previously, and the textures look great. So, all right, so we've done that. Yay. So, oh, and then just something to keep in mind. There are UV sets. You can find the UV sets in the UV editing menu, the UV toolkit. Sometimes the model, when you lay out the UVs, a whole nother map will be created. If that happens, then your low poly model is going to show up black, right? And there could be an issue with you exporting it and the UVs not exporting with the model. That's happened before. So if you ever need to do that, you can always right mouse press, and there's an option here, it's grayed out because there aren't multiple UV set maps. But if you right mouse press, there's a move down and a move up option. So if there's multiple maps here, that's how you would move this new map with the UVs up, so that when you export your model as an FBX, it will export with the UVs, as opposed to exporting without the UVs, which would be terrible. Okay, so we have, let's go over here to channels. I'm going to delete history here. Okay, and what we need to now do is bake the high poly model's textures down to the low poly model, because the low poly model has brand new UVs. They're different from the high poly model's UVs. So the way to do that in Maya is to go to Rendering, Lighting and Shading, Transfer Maps. Now I am going to remove maps and everything. We're going to start this from scratch. So our target mesh is our low poly doggy, and our source mesh is our high poly doggy, because that's the doggy that has the textures on it. So I'm going to add selected. Then we're going to check diffuse. Diffuse is just your regular old color map. I am going to click the folder here because I want to tell it where to save to. So I also want to say what type of texture extension I want, which in this case is a PNG. And I am going to save it as, we're going to call this 2, because we already did this once before. Well, I did it once before. So this is going to be version 02, right? So I can keep it clear. So this is going to be wooden dog test low diffuse version 02. I'm not done yet though. We're not going to just click OK or bake. I want to generate a new shader. And under my Maya common outputs, now if I had reset settings, this would be 256 by 256. So you want to set your map width and height. I set it to 2K, which is 2048 by 2048. And just for the sake of this tutorial, we're going to keep it at medium instead of high in terms of the sampling quality. And I'm going to bake and close. Now you can see down here on the lower left-hand corner, besides it being very hot weather where I'm located right now, you can see the percentage of what has been baked. So baking is a term, it just refers to taking the information from one model and transferring that to a 2D texture, which you then can put into a shader's material outputs, and then you can attach that shader to another model. In this case, the low poly version of this model. So that's what we're doing. We're basically taking the high poly texture information, just the color information of our high poly model, and we are transferring it to a flat PNG texture map that relates to the UVs of our low poly model. That long explanation can be summed up in one word, and that word is baking. So that is to bake a model. You can also bake the high poly sculpting information to a 2D texture, which is called a normal map. So you could do that as well, and we will do that, but we're going to do that in Substance Painter because Substance Painter does it a little bit better. So once we are done, we're at 90%, we're almost there, which is fabulous. Once we're done, we'll open up Substance, and then I'll take you through the process of bringing this texture into Substance. So let's make this doggy high invisible, and as you can see, the doggy low, it transferred. Yay! We got all this beautiful color information, and it did transfer to my doggy, even though my doggy is imperfect. All right, so I'm going to go to Substance Painter, and we're going to open her up. And I'm going to show you how you can import a map outside of Substance Painter. So you can import textures into Substance Painter. You don't have to just generate them all in Substance Painter. So the first thing we're going to do is New. I'm going to make my document resolution 2048 by 2048. We're going to do the PBR metallic roughness starter assets, and we're going to select our file. So one step I did not show y'all. Let's go back to Maya. In order to take my model into Substance, I need to export my low poly model. I already have my high poly model, but I need to export my low poly model. So I need to export it as an FBX. So you'd export it as an FBX, export selection, name it. Naming conventions are important for low and high poly models. As you can see, I have doggy high and doggy low, and those naming conventions should mirror, they should continue. So whatever your high and low poly model is named, have a suffix, one that says underscore high and one that says underscore low, and both models have the same same name, but the suffix is different. Okay. So I have an FBX of my high poly, and I have an FBX of my low poly. I'm going to select my low poly. That's what I'm going to bring into Substance. Okay. And then before I hit OK, I'm going to bring in import baked maps. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to click add. Now, if you had normal maps, or if you had, so here's my wooden, I'm using the initial FBX and texture maps that I did previous to this tutorial, so they were already made. You can select, if I had generated a normal map, you could select that. In this case, I just generated a texture map, so I'm going to select this. I'm going to click open. And there's other things too. If you wanted to change your color management to ACES, you could do that. We're just going to keep it at legacy for now, and we're going to click OK. All right, so now we have our little doggy model. This is our low poly. If we want to, we can look at it in 3D and 2D so that we can see, right? We can see both our UVs and we can see our 3D dog. So I'm going to go back to 3D only because I do want to see a little bit more of these of my libraries. All right, so then I'm going to go to texture set settings. And I'm going to scroll down to bake mesh maps. Now, if I had a normal map already, I would click the little X under normal because I wouldn't want to rebake a normal map. But I don't have a normal map. I just have a color map. So I'm going to click Bake Mesh Maps, and that's going to open the Bake Mesh Maps window. You can also uncheck a map over here in the Bake Mesh Map Settings dialog box. I'm not going to uncheck anything, but what I am going to do is make my output size 2K. The other thing that I need to do, besides bring this down so we can see a little bit easier, is I need to bring in my high poly model. So under high poly parameters, if I didn't have a high poly model, you still need to bake mesh maps, but you would click use low poly mesh as a high poly mesh. But I do have a high poly, so I'm going to click this icon that looks like a little piece of paper that's folded on the right hand side. I'm going to click it and I'm going to select my little high poly doggy and I'm going to click open. Okay. And let's scroll down. Looks like everything is good. Yep, we have the low, we have the high, and we're going to bake selected textures. When my baking is done, I can return to painting mode. So it's baking everything. It's got curvature, ambient occlusion, color ID map, which I don't really need, normal, world space normals. All right, return to painting mode. So I have painting mode, but I need to bring in that texture that I had earlier. So let's bring this up a little bit. Excuse me. I am going to select the paint bucket. I'm going to go down to layer 1 and I'm going to now hit the garbage can because I don't need it. I'm going to rename fill layer 1. This is going to be diffuse base. And now that I'm here, I'm going to scroll down to my properties fill. Now, when I'm in my properties fill, if you were over here, you want to hit this little icon that looks like a circle with like a crescent of the moon on it, or like a cookie. And what we want to do is we want to attach the base color we imported into base color information here. So I'm going to click this and I'm going to do a little search. I'm going to look for wooden. Oh, and look at that. I didn't have to type the whole thing out. I found it. There's the texture that I imported when I made my new scene. And voila, here we go. So here is my doggy and here is my texture. And he looks great. Now, if I wanted to add things to my doggy, I could go to town. I can add a new layer. I could get a paintbrush and I could start doing that. I could paint on him. I can affect his normal layer. I could make scratches in him, new scratches. I could do all sorts of things. But for this particular lesson, I just wanted to show y'all how you can basically create your normal map and all your other maps for your little for in this case my little dog, but for your scan and object. Now, if I wanted to export these and bring the new textures like this new normal map and everything into Unreal, to do that you want to do File, Export Textures. Let's pretend like I've done all this other work. I fixed the areas that are missing any kind of texture, you know, the gray of his muzzle and all that, I would go to export textures. Okay. And then you want to, you know, make sure you go to the file folder that you want to go to. I'm going to go to Wooden Dog. I'm going to make a new folder, and this folder is going to be Substance Textures. Select it. I'm going to hit Select Folder. Then I'm going to go to Output Templates. Now, we are going to be taking this into Unreal, so I'm going to select Unreal Engine for Packed. And then I'm going to go back to Settings, and I'm going to make sure it's a PNG. So this is where you would change your file type. And then I'm just going to export. And now I have my new textures that can be taken into Unreal. Now, I will make another video that talks about how you can retopologize from scratch if the auto-retopping tool is not working. You would use something called Quad Draw in Maya. But until next time, bye everybody. Have a great day.